Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, leading research on alternate refrigerants and energy efficiency for heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration equipments, including Berkeley Labs, research in support of the Clean Cooling Collaborative in India, China, and various emerging economies. Please, Mr. Shah. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Monish Sirupurappu. Mr. Monish is the founder and principal architect of Ant Studio, an innovative architectural practice. He is also the co-founder of Cool Ant, a sustainability think tank innovating climate-responsive building envelopes. We also have with us Mr. Alok Deshmukh, co-founder and managing director, Superhuman Race Private Limited. Mr. Alok has over 22 years of experience spanning contribution to over 125 projects in various countries with a focus on energy and sustainability implementation. I would like to finally invite the moderator for this session, Mr. Sanjeev Arora, President and Lead Business Manager, Motion Business ABB India Limited. Mr. Sanjeev has been associated with ABB for over 2 decades and has held numerous management positions. Over these years, he has been a strong proponent of promoting energy efficiency and sustainable solutions for various industrial applications. I would like to request him to give the opening remark and continue with the discussion.
We still have 1 hour. So good evening, colleagues, and thank you very much for introducing the theme and the panelists. It's my honor to be the part of FEED and moderate this conversation with my distinguished industry guests. I would also like to acknowledge the path-breaking work done by IEEE in advocating the cause of energy efficiency, especially Dr. Satish, who has been a pioneer in this field. Energy efficiency is one of such topics that cuts across divisions within ABB. And we are equally passionate in working with our stakeholders, educating them, and also talk about the long-term benefits and impacts of adopting these industrial solutions. I represent ABB Motion business area, which comprises of electric motors, generators, variable frequency drives, automation products, traction converters, drives for e-mobility, and rail. And of course, the service is an umbrella cutting across our products and systems. Our products have set new benchmark in the industry, and the energy efficient motors and drives, what we have supplied in India over a decade, has saved a potential of annual energy saving of 14 terawatt hour. And I would like to say that beyond our well-established product portfolio, at ABB we also support entrepreneurship and startups in the technology space. Cenerlip, an ABB-powered innovation growth hub, is one of such initiatives. Now, when I come to the theme of the discussions, crossing the Death Valley journey of startup. Yes, indeed, it sounds quite fascinating. We all know that India has witnessed an unprecedented surge in the creation and funding the startups for the last 10 years. And this has solidified its position as a major global center for innovation and business. Factors such as increased enterprise application, fintech, transportation logistics tech, food and agriculture tech, auto tech, in fact, EdTech to the industrial IoTs and energy management piece, India is now the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world and expected CAGR of 12 to 15%. So that means maybe the Death Valley is somewhere else, but the success lies in India. Investment firms, angel investors, venture capitalists, and private equity firms have demonstrated a remarkable level of confidence in Indian startups despite the obstacles what we encounter. in the funding landscape still in this time. Efficient products and their optimal operations is one area contributing to the energy savings. But then when we talk of the energy efficiency, we need one more E, that is entrepreneurship and possibility of various business model around them. Despite the difficulties faced by our startups during last years, tech startups have done extremely well, with 60% of the founders reporting an increase in revenue and profitability in 2023. Many of the Indian startups have shown resilience. And today, when we discuss this topic with our esteemed panelists, it would be fascinating to learn how they navigate this death valley. It's my pleasure again to welcome Monish, Alok, and Nihar. And really feel very proud when I be a moderator here with you, and look forward for your more views to enlighten the forum. Yeah. So, would you be first calling the people, or should I? Okay. So, so what my request would be that each of the my panelists, I would request we start with Nihar first. That what to tell about his own ventures, and then take us through the journey. Nihar.
So thank you for the kind introduction, Mr. Arora, and thank you to IEEE and all of you for this opportunity. So today I'm going to talk about how to design a cooling innovation ecosystem for India. And my name is So my name is Nihar Shah, and I work at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. Now, those of you that have seen the movie Oppenheimer recently probably know that Oppenheimer's best friend was Ernest Orlando Lawrence. And that logo that you see of our organization represents the cyclotron that he was building. So Lawrence Berkeley Lab is located in the Silicon Valley area, and it's a very interesting place where you can really get to see the journey in terms of innovation, and where big finance and big tech come together. So I think this is a particular area of interest for me, and I'll talk a little bit about why. So Lawrence Berkeley Lab, of course, we have 16 Nobel Prizes in our history. We're one of the 17 Department of Energy national labs. And one of the most interesting things that I got to do recently was I served on the technical review committee of the Global Cooling Prize, which also I think IEEE helped organize. So I'll talk a little bit about that journey and how that leads to the idea of designing a cooling innovation ecosystem here. So first, I'll say that the cooling innovation, is driven essentially because the cooling industry is in a disruptive transition right now because of the refrigerant phase down under the Kigali Amendment. I was also involved in the negotiations of that. Now, what you see here on this slide is that essentially this is the phase down schedule in the different countries. The blue lines represent the phase down schedule in the developed countries, while the green lines represent the phase down schedule of refrigerants in the developing economies. Essentially, this means that we have about 6 years to deploy the right technology in terms of cooling. One of the other things that, of course, one hear about is that efficient cooling costs at potentially cost much more than inefficient cooling. So affordability is a key interesting thing. Now the global cooling price had a target of essentially having a price point that is roughly twice the price point of the baseline air conditioner, in addition to having a target to reduce the climate impact by 5 times. A couple of other interesting points about this is that there were over 100 applications, but in terms of the finalists, half were, so there were 8 finalists, half of them were startups and half of them were established global manufacturers. But when it eventually came to the winners, 2 winners were announced in April 2021, and both the winners happened to be large global manufacturers. So effectively what happened, we see out of 100 first applications and then 8 finalists, 4 startups out of the 8 finalists, and none of them effectively, none of the startups actually crossed the valley of death in terms of this particular one can call competition. So clearly something potentially went wrong, or some of these innovations really didn't cross the valley of death, and we need to think about potentially why. So that is something that we need to think about. Now, this report that I'm showing, the chart from up here was the report written by the Department of Energy, or sponsored by the Department of Energy in 2014. Interesting thing, 7 years before the global cooling price, they essentially predicted the technologies that actually showed up in the global cooling price as the finalists. So it's not that this was rocket science. This was something that was known, that these technologies would be among the ones that would win. But there's innovation that is still being left on the shelf. Even though this is known that the various technologies are in the pipeline, why are they not actually getting deployed? And so we need to essentially think about how do we design a support infrastructure so that the innovations that are there, that the engineers and the scientists are coming up with, and then the entrepreneurs want to deploy, how do we design an ecosystem to actually make sure that they actually get to the market and actually serve the customer and have the impact that we want? So this is why a cooling innovation ecosystem is essential. So now when you talked about valleys of death, this is a very famous chart, but essentially what it shows you is how innovations go from technology readiness level. TRLs are technology readiness levels. So 1 through 10, and then there is manufacturer readiness level, which is MRLs on the right side of that chart. So essentially what it shows you is that there are various valleys of death. There's a technological valley of death, there's a commercialization valley of death, and a profitability valley of death. The technological valley of death happens when essentially you go from a concept to a product, and you're not able to transition the concept or something that might work in a lab setting into a viable product. In terms of commercialization, you might have a product that works, but you might not be able to transition that into a viable commercial product. So you might not actually be able to be commercially viable. And then when you talk about scaling it up, you might not have profitability. So I might be selling one thing and the customer might want something else. So there are various pivoting strategies that are needed for a scientist or a technologist or someone who is an entrepreneur to cross those various valleys of death. And essentially, this is the idea of creating that innovation ecosystem. Essentially, the early part of the, I would say, the valleys of death or the supporting ecosystem that's needed is usually government funded. And then the industry usually takes over as the government starts to de-risk the technology, and as the entrepreneur or technologist is able to prove that the technology or the product is actually able to cross the valley of death. And now there's a viable product, there's a viable technology, now it's profitable, and now the business model seems to be working. So each of those questions essentially needs to be addressed by the startup in order to actually get to a point where now you are able to manufacture and scale it up. And so what I'm arguing here is that we actually need the whole of the innovation ecosystem. And of course, now already we have this, as you heard from Mr. Arora, we have it for various different technologies. But I would say very specifically for energy efficiency and for cooling, we potentially need to design it and target it very specifically for this sector, because there are very specific challenges that, as you heard in the various sessions and also tomorrow, we're going to be facing. And clearly, even the global cooling prize, there were technologies that have faced the valley of death and not crossed it over. So we need to again think about it as a community as to how we design this ecosystem and make it to the make sure that the technologies cross the valley of death. So I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but essentially the Building Technologies Office at the Department of Energy has designed this program called Impel, which is called Incubating Market-Propelled Entrepreneurial Mindset at the Labs and Beyond. The idea is that technologists don't necessarily always think like entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs don't necessarily always think like bankers and investors. So how do you essentially educate a scientist or a technologist to take the technology and make it into a product and then make the investors happy. So essentially, this is the 5th year of this program, and the idea here is to potentially use the template of the Impel program to design a cooling innovation ecosystem. There's been quite a large success story. 250 early stage innovators, 174 awards, pilots, $105 million in terms of innovation, funding raised, and a lot of the focus, of course, I think was, marginalized on non-white, non-male innovators. So, of course, supporting, marginalized communities as well, and this was diversity of states. So, this program has been successful, and potentially we can replicate some of that success in India by designing an equivalent type of program for India. So, thank you. And if you have any questions, happy to address that.
Thank you very much, Nihar. I think it was really, really good that how you connect the 3 dots, right from the R&D to a product and how it is viable to scale it up. So thank you for that, and then we take the questions later. Now, I request my next speaker, Monish, to please come on the dais and have his views.
Everyone, this is Monish. I am an architect by training. So after working for 6-7 years in the industry, we came up with this product called the Coolant, which happened. I mean, I'll run you through the overall journey of how it evolved and all that. But then. So we came across this idea of cooling using terracotta, which So as a startup, we're exploring this nature-based cooling solutions as a product. This is something I think everybody in the room already knows. I mean, the cooling paradox. As we try to cool our spaces, we are ending up actually heating the space around us. I think this is something that, like, we're all pretty much familiar in the room. But the idea behind the work that we guys are doing stemmed from an earthen pot, I think, which all of us like seeing how the water in a pot remains naturally cool. So for one of the projects that we are doing, which was this one, like there is a DG set in the right side corner that is there, so it was throwing a lot of heat. So the idea that stemmed that, instead of trying to, so we had to do something about it. As an architect, we were working on this project and we had to do something with the hot air that was coming in. So we thought, what if, we take the same principle of an earthen pot instead of trying to cool the water, what if we do the air with that? So I'll not get into the technical specs, but then this is how the journey of our startup began. And so we thought, how can we take Beehive as an inspiration behind the product and do something with that? And then going forward, we saw that there's some really good performance and the response that we got both from the project and also from the when we put it out in the public domain, we got a very good response. So we thought, how do we take this to the buildings and then see? So that's where the journey of an architectural studio started into began as a startup. And for me, personally, coming from architecture and design background, had no idea about what does even a startup mean, what is a business model for that matter, or how do we take and scale it up. These are all like new terminologies for us. But then the whole quest has been that, how do we first try and first solve the problem in the first place and see if there is something that we can do in the process as we scale. But in the process, I've been actually part of a lot of these incubation sessions and startup training programs and whatnot. Most of the places that the first thing that people teach you or train you is to do the standardization. You need to standardize your product or the market that is there. Only then you'll be able to scale something and then take it to the market. That's the business 101 that we learn in this. But then probably what we guys ended up doing is to see that for every project, because being an architect, since we are used to customizing everything for our clients for each and every project. So the journey began in which we started thinking, rather than looking at scalability and standardization, what if we look at each product as something and then see? So these are some of the other things along the way that we came across. So now we have 5 different products, which very quickly I'll skim through. So the idea in this thing became that, in the first case, we started using the system as a direct evaporative cooling system. So we thought, what if we, instead of trying to make something direct evaporative cooling, which is not something acceptable for majority of the masses when we take this out, because people don't like water spilling all over. We said we take inspiration from nature, in this instance, a leaf, and try to see if we can imbibe this evapotranspiration into the product. Then we came up with this, the new thing, what we call as the aero leaves, in which the water is within the system, and with the help of this, we can regulate the daylighting, the spacing, and create both ventilation and also cooling at the same time. So yeah, that's the evolution from what happened, and then we started then looking at how this particular idea, what started with an earthen pot, like how we can scale it into buildings and building envelopes, and that's where the idea of the building envelopes actually started coming into picture, because what we realized is the first thing that we did, the challenge that everybody started saying is that, oh, you made something for the villagers. So it is probably good for a rural area where people can actually put it in front of the mud houses. I think these are the kind of questions that people constantly were asking us. So we said, okay, no, I think we need to prove that even solution something like this by working on product innovation and also development, we can prove that we can actually take it to building envelopes at a large scale and do something with that. And so yeah, and later these are some of the projects that we have implemented with this idea. This is our own studio. And this is a built project in Bilaspur, where recently we have finished, wherein we have done this as a shading and ventilation mechanism on a commercial project, first of the commercial projects that we have done. And in this, the whole idea is that we can adjust the entire the system according to the sun path and also the angles and so on. So also one thing that we tried between this and this also, in terms of, because it was really nice to see Nihar talking about the Death Valley. I could relate it to in many of these the curves. The first thing actually, we worked for 2 years in the trying to just prove that the earthen pots can actually work and scale. But we realized that without standardizing and also industrializing the whole process, we have to take it to the market that doesn't work. So that's where we had to go back to the drawing board and actually work on the product innovation about. If you want to scale it, we have to then also start looking at standardized industrial process for manufacturing in that. So then came this third, but then this is again industrialized. It has a particular, the scale and shape. It's foolproof in many ways. And, but we also thought that what if, as a startup, a lot of people used to reach out to us from different parts of the country. And it's at a level of a startup, it's not always possible for us to reach out to all the customers and people who are reaching out to us from all over. So I can say that in the second year or the third year of a startup, 900 inquiries actually reached out to us. For us, the 900, if you look at an overall level, it's not much. But we could only fulfill probably 15 to 20 of those. So there's a huge gap. So then we thought, if we have to scale, and what if we also look around making things open source or something that people can make it themselves? So what we are able to provide the information and data around it. So then we came up with this idea of using brick tiles for this, where people can do it at their own place using the system, but not actually, so that we don't have to transport and send stuff from where we are manufacturing. So this is something that again became part of the thought process that we came up with, where 6 skins can work. And this is a project that we have done for the army in Jaipur, army camp. On the ground floor, which is washed, you can see that is done completely with air conditioners. So for us, we were given an opportunity to see how on the upper level we can replace air conditioners and completely make it with the system such as this. So this what we call as the binary, done to see how we can do it. And currently we are in the process of trying to record the thermal comfort and over the complete year and to collect the data around what's the performance and so on. So like we see a lot of good application for this in schools and institutions where air conditioning is a big problem. So systems like this can actually can take up. Now, like this idea, we also thought that, what if rather than limiting this to the buildings, using artwork probably as an also medium for cooling towers. So cooling towers that can also be both made using terracotta, what we call this as the cooling cacti, and like using less, trying to exploit the material properties of clay which retains water. So the idea behind this is that in the cacti we can, the material can actually retain water so that we are not constantly, continuously pouring water on the system, but then see how that reacts. So this was done in an airport. These are some of the images from under construction where we are doing this as a cooling tower with that. Now this is the last part of the work. In the entire process, like I said, when we started with this, the constant question has always been that, are we looking at only terracotta that we are making or something that is there? So in the previous example, all of these blocks, this terracotta, is actually collected from brick factories which is discarded. So even if there's a crack or a breakage in the brick, people don't buy it. And they call it a second or third class, this brick tiles, and they dispose it off or something. So we thought, what if we can reuse that material to make something? So we're trying to see how we can do that. And then this thought extended even to further, like I said, the whole idea of instead of we sending material and product, if people can make it on their own. So everybody, most of us are familiar with Gabion walls. So this is something that we have done using, I can also see a lot of these terracotta cups on the tables. So after the usage, people typically throw those. And whether it is for lassi or whether it is for chai cups, and even a lot of this brick debris. So we started using even this as a cooling system for walls. So instead of trying to make something with the terracotta, like the spots and all of that, so this also provides ample amount of surface area for the cooling to take place. The material still behaves the same way. So we started thinking, like, what if we convert this both as a wall that can also cool the spaces? So this is something that we're currently working on to see if we can scale this to projects. Luckily we have few takers for this. So I think that's about the startup journey of how we have been evolving, trying to see fight this constant question about should we stop at product innovation at some place, or I think this has been a conflict and a fight within, probably in the studio, whether because this defeats the standardization which typically what startups and organizations look at, because we are trying to see constantly what can come out still, further keep pushing. And so yeah, that's about this. But then this is one thought that I keep, even as a founder for the practice and also startup, I keep facing that this is what we are taught, and this is what we are all in the colleges and stuff, that traditional architecture is really good and climate local responsive and so on and so forth. But the reality is that that's a luxury. The reality is that only a fraction of people can actually afford an architect or the practice architecture. And even in the last panel discussion, we heard that the organized sector in the construction industry is only less than 4%, and in that people who are doing sustainable projects, even a fraction of that. So this is a thought that I think we constantly keep looking at, and we are trying to evolve our startup around to make product innovation in a manner that how we can try to take it to people wherever they are, and so that people can make locally, and in the process trying to exchange information or make things open source and see how things can take forward. So, so we don't know. This is typically what people say, that the valley of death. It is much more complex than what it is, but it is every day morning we realize that end of the day, oh, हमने बहुत काम किया है, we are really happy that we are doing so much work, but then when we actually look at the numbers, we feel like we have done nothing. So that's a thought that we are constantly fighting with. But thank you.
Thank you, Munish. And let me tell you, if the buildings start breathing, the human race will have a much better air to breathe as well. Well done. So now, my next panelist, Alok, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So my company is called Superhuman Race. We're in the business of measuring good as it is known by many different names. business sustainability outcomes is one of the names. ESG is all the rage these days, in some parts of the world anyways. Social responsibility, community impact, philanthropy, individual as well as corporate, volunteering, giving. What we are doing is we are closing the feedback loops as we specialize in this field of measuring good. And the reason we are doing this is because in the field of measuring good or impact, what we found is that, this is one of the things that I say, is that sustainability has a communication problem. And the problem goes to the exceptionalism that every sustainable solution project or practitioner tries to put forth, that my project is different, my intervention is unique, my beneficiaries are different, my location is unique, and that comes in the way of scale. Because in the absence of standardization, so for example, in the business reporting realm, one never comes across somebody saying, oh, you know, I've come across this fantastic concept called EBIT, and you know, it's going to be the, you know, it's going to be something that's like unlike anything you've ever heard before. But in the space of impact, almost everybody comes up with this very, very exceptional, unique kind of reporting. And that comes in the way of bankability, investability, and insurability, and that is the problem we are setting out to solve. So when we started out, a lot of people asked us, I hope you've not left your day jobs, and are you for real? And you know, and now as we are, so we are in fact, I think TRL 7, 8, and looking to scale TRL 9. The profitability value of death is the one we are kind of going past now. So who pays for measuring good, right? So this is a list of our clients and partners that we have currently using the platform to good effect. So I'm not going to read out all the names. It is a sector agnostic platform that goes about articulating the value of the good that organizations and individuals are doing. So what is the problem statement that we set out to solve? It turns out more than 98% investors are looking for data-driven disclosures. About 70% of the inquiries that come to us start from, like, you know, a CPPIB of Canada or a GIC of Singapore is looking for you know, disclosures from us as they consider us for investments. And while we've done some operational sustainability or some project sustainability, we don't know where to start in terms of disclosures and such. You know, what framework should we adopt and so on and so forth, right? And so also there is a cost of not solving the problem. So there is an access to capital cost. There is a higher cost of capital that is seen more and more often now. Non-compliances can challenge license to operate, and there is also a hidden cost of climate risk or any impact risk. You know, I often say that the history of human enterprise and industry has been built on externalizing all the costs that we can externalize. So while it was okay to put GHG emissions in the atmosphere, we all did it. While it was okay to put toxins in our water streams and waste streams, we all did it. Now those externalized costs, because of increasing awareness, are coming home to roost. And that is what is, you know, finding its way into things like, you know, an internal price of carbon, what if there is a carbon tax, and so on and so forth. So that's the cost of not solving the problem. So we are a data company. We have an AI-enabled platform that helps getting primary data onto the platform, calculating and visualizing impact, and automating ESG reporting. So most of our clients will come to us for automated reporting or for a reporting requirement. But what they are able to use the platform to very good effect is usually the insights that bring procurement efficiency or operational efficiency or value chain efficiency opportunities that come from the ESG data. So just a very quick video. So like I said, we are in the business of measuring good. We currently have brands that total a market cap of little over $500 billion, 600,000 users across 31 countries. We are doing ESG beyond reporting. Reporting is, I always say, like yesterday's newspaper. So we take customers on the journey of what to measure. We generate a lot of the metrics and indicators that need to be reported to the frameworks. We give contextual dashboards with dynamic emissions and the smart collaboration. So depending on the industry, the priorities, the disclosures and the compliance needs, the platform will suggest indicator sets. What we mean by generative data is like while we get 100% of primary data, less than 10% of the data is actually collected and 90% is generated using formulae. And then performance context. So is this number good? What does this number mean for my business? How do I compare it with my peers? These are some of the things that we are able to help our clients actually answer in the boardrooms as well as in the boiler rooms. And the dynamic emissions factors. So one of the things we've seen is that sustainability investments don't always result in a differentiated offering to customers. And that is a problem that comes in the way of sustainability scaling. And that goes to like the ability to do dynamic emissions factors. And then auto-generated rules-based notifications. We have our own homegrown distributed ledger. So every granular node of information where goods and money exchange hands with evidence or with measurement is traceable and accountable on the platform. And we've had instances of auditors having auditor access and coming back and saying that 100% of the data is accurate and more than 95% of it is assured. So just very quickly, we start with like what data you need to collect, identifying the data sources and the providers, so whether they're employees, suppliers, or systems. And then, you know, what are the units, methodology, formulae that need to go into it for data quality and completeness, and then making the data visible in all manner of dashboards and analytics and insights. That's what we do. So on the top left of your screen, it's a dashboard that one of our clients used to have, right? I mean, it's this is very typical, like Excel is one of the most common tools that we are displacing. So this is, I think, the rows have like the zones or the business divisions, and the columns have all the criteria, and I think they have people, product, process in red, green, and blue. And then each of them is getting a score, and if their score is less than a certain threshold, it's red and such. And so what we were able to do was like, you know, move that to very, very actionable insights in terms of, you know, so this was a real estate developer. So what does this mean in terms of per square foot of, you know, saleable area that you have and so on. So transparency as well as actionable insights. And actionable insights is where we really bring the, you know, the value of the offering that we have forward. Just a quick recap of our journey. We started in 2016. We spent 2.5 years doing just product development. None of us came from a business background and nobody from like the tech startup kind of space. So we did not even know about the MVP kind of a, you know, paradigm. We thought we needed to get something rigorous before we even went in front of anybody for business development. We landed our first client in 2019, that was SBI Foundation. And then since then it's been essentially a story of growth that's been averaging 3x year on year in terms of revenue. For 3 years now, we've had more clients than employees, which means we are doing tech right. We have had zero outside investment so far, zero spend on marketing so far, and no salespeople. It's all been word of mouth and you know, based on the networks that we have. And we want to now blitz scale. So this is the journey that we see going forward. We want to go from the 20 odd clients that we have to 100 clients this year. We will be launching an ESG Lite product and platform as well. And because we are doing this at the granular node, we figure that we are going to be able to do product level emissions in very, very elegant ways and in very real, traceable and accountable ways. And then once all of that is on the, you know, on the platform, how do we deepen the engagement with the people that are on the platform? One of the things that we are trying to solve for is that we cannot make sustainability a default choice if at the point of purchase, whether it is as an individual or whether it is as a corporate purchaser, we don't have the information we need to make a sustainable procurement decision. And that is one of the things that we see us being able to solve as we go forward. And that in turn then kind of links to financial outcomes, monetizing that data ecosystem for investors. We are already having some very interesting conversations with investors as well as with insurers and insurance brokers in terms of how some of these risks and the real data can really kind of help quantify those risks in a much more reliable manner. And then, I mean, 5 years from now, we want all good anywhere in the world to reside on our platform. Some of the places we've been recognized in, a quick glance at the founders. I've been ex-Schneider, ex-RMI. My co-founder who leads product development has been ex-Boeing. And so we bring our business background and we're kind of bringing it to bear in the product that we are developing. A little bit about the name is that the space of impact and the space of good, you know, it's fraught with this imagery of like black and white images and sad music. And nobody wants to wake up to that. One of the things I often say is that, you know, who gets up saying, I want to be zero? Right? We talk about net zero, but nobody wakes up saying that I want to be zero. And I think we need to flip some of these metrics. We need to say that, you know, I'm going to make my revenue productivity of my carbon infinite, right? Or my margin productivity of my carbon infinite. And so in the space of good, there's also a parallel discourse that everybody loves, which is the discourse of superhumans and superheroes, right? Where whether it is Krish or, you know, Iron Man or any of these superhumans, these are all people who are rushing to help others in need. And we all get excited by that discourse. So we see superhuman race as being the sidekick for the human race to become the superhuman race. That's kind of where we're at. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Alok. And I think as you rightly said, and we all know that what gets measured, get corrected. And with this more and more mandate coming on BRSRs for the industries, I think you will do a great service to them with your product. So a great future for you. Thank you. So I think with this, we are just above 6, and I'll pick up one question for you so that you can give more insights, which probably you may not have covered in your presentation. So first I go with Nihar. So Nihar, what lessons can one learn or draw from the Global Cooling Prize for designing an innovation ecosystem for the cooling in India?
Thank you, for the question. So I think just looking at the Global Cooling Prize, one thing that I would really like to see potentially is to, like, there were again 100 applications, 4 startups and 4 manufacturing companies, and then you know, something happened and then there were 2 winners. So the 2 winners everyone knows, but what happened to the rest of the people who applied for it, and you know, which valley of debt did they encounter, you know, why did something not actually make it to a final product and get to the target? So there is a lot of potential information there in that journey that could be harvested to actually, you know, think about how one could potentially support many more entrepreneurs, many more technologies to actually make it to market. And I would like to see that actually, you know, inform our progress going forward in designing this, because I think cooling, of course, is a very important issue for India. It's a resilience issue, it's a carbon issue, it's a human issue. And you know, one of the learnings from the Global Cooling Prize also is that dehumidification, you know, better dehumidification is important also. We're going to see more climate impacts, we're going to see more you know, high humidity events. How do we design our equipment and our buildings in a way that addresses, you know, and really gets all the innovations that we need to actually get to the world that we need to build? And we need all of them. We can't just leave things by the wayside and say, oh yeah, it didn't work, right? We have to really map it out, and that's what I would like to say. So thank you.
I think that's very well explained, and especially when we talk the cool part of it, and I think that will play a big role, as well as what kind of products we are using for really cooling systems, how we are optimizing them, and how we are actually ensuring that they are used with the best of the optimization. That would play a key role. But thank you very much. Then I come to Monish. What kind of government initiatives can help a startup like yours?
I think when we look at the scale of the problem that we have right now, so like the easiest way, or probably the best way to actually like start looking at is, if every building in India going forward, if it is made climate responsive, I think that's where the base or the start point is. But currently, when we look at the the awareness or the initiatives that are there, they're mostly around how to make low energy systems, or like, which is not bad. I mean, it's really good that we talk about efficient and 5-star rated air conditioning systems and all that, but nowhere we speak about what is how buildings or even the governments, like, how to make it local and more climate responsive. So if there are initiatives around that, also awareness programs around how to make every building that's coming up to be climate responsive, and in the process talk about embodied or operational energy and so on and so forth, then people will start naturally looking towards these solutions, and that will really help startups and startups like us who are working in this field to do or make some impact.
Yeah, you're right, and we had a short discussion in the last, I would say, panel discussion, wherein there was a debate whether to incentivize or not to incentivize. That was quite interesting. But I think self-awareness and learning will also go a long way in this. So thank you, Manish. Alok, for you now, how with this focus on ESG theme of things and energy efficiency being a catalyst in driving this, how do you infer the same in your venture?
Yeah, so for us, one of the things that we, our clients will come to us for the reporting functionality of automation, but they start finding these insights that bring forth procurement or design efficiency. So a use case, for example, was that in the case of a real estate developer that we were working for, we were able to see that the materials emissions for glass for a cluster of their projects was much higher than the company average. And that begged the question, is there a design language change in these cluster of projects? And while the knee-jerk reaction was like, no, we have a standard design language, when they actually looked at the projects, they did find that there was a higher amount of glass that was being used, which in turn affects, not just the embodied emissions, but also the operational emissions that come from the, from the buildings that are being built. In another case, they found that a particular raw material was coming from a distance for a particular location that was 5x the company average, right? And so is the data correct, or is there an efficiency opportunity, or is it for good reason that it is coming from as far as it is? And they did in fact find that that was actually a procurement efficiency opportunity. They were able to source the material from a closer source. So, energy efficiency in and of itself comes with a business case, but sometimes you need ways to be able to see that economic value in ways that kind of just hits you in the face, right? I mean, one of the things that when Satish and I used to work together at Schneider, we had developed is that energy is invisible. Efficiency is not something you can put a meter on. This was also discussed in the morning, right? It's a calculated value. So you're basically like, looking, it's the absence of energy use, right? So you're looking to articulate the value of the absence of something that is invisible, right? And that's the challenge of the energy efficiency space, is that how do we then put like the rupee or the profitability in the numerator and maybe a core business performance metric or a, core business indicator in the denominator, so that it all becomes contextual to business. And that's what we are doing, and that we see that that has the biggest bang for effort.
I think very well explained. And just to give you my perspective on this, we at ABB have reduced our GHG emissions, if I take a base of 2009, by 82%. And I think it's not what you have to do as per the guideline or compliances, but I think it is also a belief that we should all believe that what is right and what is the right thing to do. So whether you talk of plastic usages, or you talk of zero waste to landfill, or water positivity, or maybe the building management systems, I think these are the things which as a company, as an individual, we should feel that these are good for the future. And then we do it, then we put our heart and soul into that. No, I think really I think your product will really help most of the industries in times to come. So with this, I throw it open for the questions. So yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Alok, I have two questions for you, sort of very quick questions. The first is that would you please highlight what is the prime motivation for enterprises to come to you and to transition from, say, Excel sheets to sort of, a more readable dashboards? That's the first question. And the second is that what are the standards that you benchmark these sort of ESG metrics against, and do you think there are enough standards available to do this benchmarking? Thanks.
Yeah, so the motivation is, roughly speaking, 2/3 of our inquiries come from folks that have had an investor ask for disclosures that are to certain frameworks or formats. So it's an access to capital and cost of capital kind of motivation. 1/3 of our inquiries are from mature, pros at sustainability kind of clients who are just, they just feel the real pain of data collection, right? And data collection, the data provider's job is a thankless job, and data providers keep telling the central sustainability teams that you just keep coming to us for data, you don't give us anything back in return. And they're able to flip some of that by providing even the folks in the boiler room or on the sites the efficiency opportunities coming out of the data. So those are like broad brushstrokes, the primary motivations that we are seeing. In some cases, it's also, the more evolved players want to tell the story better. They know they are heroes, but they are often relegated to be like the supporting actors in the cast, and they are looking for like, the data storytelling, compelling stories of impact kind of, aids. So that's the one part. What was your second question? So there are a lot of, it's an alphabet soup, right? I think at last count there were like some 180 or 200 frameworks for reporting. But some of the things that, because at the end of the day, it's only the data that any company has is the data that they have, and all of these things need to then find their way into all the different indicators of the different reporting frameworks that they might be going to. There are, and with a lot of these frameworks, what we are finding is that there is a lot of room for interpretation that gets done very creatively. And I think that, some of the things need to happen sectorally, where we need to say that denominators need to be defined, or the way you count the numerators needs to have rules that are consistent, because we've done some of these things for like some of the sectors where when the board is seeing our dashboards, they want to know two things: what does this mean, how am I doing compared to my peers, and is this reliable? So is this reliable, we've kind of solved for. When we start looking at compared to the peers, we find factors of magnitude of the data that's being reported. So like, for water intensity for the real estate segment, for 3 developers in Mumbai, for instance, one will report a water intensity in decimals, one in single digits, and one in high double digits, right? And it begs the question, so everybody is playing with scopes and boundaries, denominator definitions, and you report what is convenient. So there is a need for standardization, even though there are like far too many frameworks, and everybody picks the framework they want to play in, and leave the others to the others.
So, thanks. This is Prasad. I have a question for Nihar. So Nihar, we've seen 2 presentations here from 2 different types of organizations, businesses. One is working more on data, and the other one is working more on sort of bricks and mortar stuff. And when we talk about innovation and the cycle that you showed, data-based startups, data-based businesses have a shorter product development cycle, feedback cycle, customer review cycle, and all of those things. And when you get to bricks and mortar, and especially if it's buildings or infrastructure, it goes into years. So investors don't have time for that kind of feedback cycle. And especially in India, where discount rate can be really high with the way we see the economy growing. Are we going to see a lot more challenge for investors to get involved with bricks and mortar or physical innovations compared to tech innovations, which India is very good at, and there's a lot of money going into that? So, what's your thought?
Yeah, so I mean, this I think is a very interesting question because you know I would say that there is a diversity of investors potentially in the space. I think investors need to be educated as well, and some of them may have a different appetite for impact and risk, and you know, when they see the return, they might want to see a return later, but with a much higher impact potentially. So some of these other things that you might have, that a startup might have or that a technology might have in terms of characterizing, the risk reward profile, I think need to be kind of looked at, and then we potentially even investors and even technologists and entrepreneurs potentially need to think about saying no to certain kinds of money and yes to other kinds of money. So I think this is something that, as again designing the ecosystem, we need different flavors of investors. Why is the government a particular kind of investor? Why is the bank a different kind of investor? And we need to bring different flavors of money to bear on the ecosystem for the particular types of, like you say, bricks and mortar, and you say data, right? So those are very different profiles of products. You need to match the money with the type of profile, risk reward profile that you're going to see to be able to make the innovation ecosystem work. And that, I think, and there are different flavors of money out there. I mean, people that have more money than they can count, I mean, can potentially invest those in different ways. And so we need to really think about how do we actually ask for the money that we need in terms of not just amounts of money, but flavors of money. And that, I think, is also a way to think about this whole problem. Thanks.
So I don't see any. Okay. Yeah. The last question.
I'm K.K. Roy Chaudhary, an energy and environment expert. My question to Mr. Manish, how far you are incorporating traditional wisdom and knowledge in your design thinking? You are showing something, following nature's examples, but how far you are doing it? Because there are there are area-specific excellence in our traditional practices. West is coming and saying, I mean, as they tour here, but our architects probably are broadly ignoring those things. That's why there are many people who feel that the architecture profession by itself is not up to the mark, so far as doing business is concerned, because your clientele is restricted to a few urban choices, and therefore achieving, to be brief, achieving net zero in your profession and all those things will be hardly anything. You are unable to cover a larger market where you can show your excellence as well as conserve the nature unlimitedly. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, so when anyone actually reaches out to us for a project, so first we start by looking at like the basics of the ventilation system and the air movement patterns inside the building, and trying to fix that before even talking about envelope cooling or anything to do with the cooling roofs or in any kind of giving any solution, because that's the first basis that we discuss with them, and then we go about solving it by talking about cooling systems and whatever is the right system for that particular project, rather than trying to say that okay, you do this and envelope cooling and everything will be solved. So we try to see what is the best way to get the ideal thermal comfort in a particular building, and then go about solving that. So yeah, that's why we are doing, and then we work with architects, we're working with some of the environment designers in buildings, and luckily I would say that because of this, one thing that we really enjoy the most is in a lot of the projects and people who reach out to us, they don't have an architect or designer in the project. So it really also helps us in communicating to them about the basics of how they can actually alter the building in the first place, so that systems like this can be much more effective. So yeah, I think it has been mixed, because we are currently dealing with roughly about 60, 70 odd different people from all over the country, like projects, and only very few of them actually have an architect. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
So, thank you very much. I think it was really, really insightful.
Sir, excuse me. Because of such limitations, what I express, that's why public are also, apprehensive of approaching you for getting their, structures done through architects, because therefore your costs are exorbitantly high.
I mean, I guess that's a different conversation altogether when we talk about the cost of hiring an architect and architects in the first place. But what we try to do is that share a lot of information in the first place at free of cost, which is about awareness and sharing information, and then we go about actually discussing anything with the solution that we're talking about.
That was the last question, and thank you very much for your insightful discussions. And you not only showcased what you are doing, but also motivated most of us that what we should do and how we should go about, and what we should do is really good and cool. So with this, I also thank the audience who have been so interactive, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you for this very interesting and inspiring session. Thank you all speakers and the panel and the moderator. Now, I would like to request Dr. Bhaskar Natarajan, Senior Fellow AEEE, to felicitate the moderator and the panelists, and also close today's program.
Good evening. While thanking the panel for their interesting and engaging observations and discussions, I just want to thank